My niece was gunned down by a violent ex-boyfriend that she put a restraining order on, and he ambushed her and shot her not 5 times but 10 times right here in front of her house.
Mariah will be the 4th woman in our family that was murdered by someone that said that they loved them.
The morning breaks quiet on Russell Avenue North. It's 7:50 a.m., September 15th, 2025. Security cameras capture what neighbors will later describe as a sound they'll never forget. 15 gunshots in rapid succession. A Jeep Cherokee sits abandoned, driver's door wide open. Brass casings catch the early sunlight across the pavement. Inside that vehicle, 34-year-old Mariah Samuels takes her last breath. Just 7 hours earlier, she had typed 9 words that would become her final message to the world. Clearly, the protective order isn't doing shit. A court-issued protection order lay somewhere in her home, signed, sealed, and completely useless against the man walking away from her body. David Wright had already served 15 years behind bars. He knew exactly how much a piece of paper was worth. Within hours of his arrest, David Wright would sit across from Minneapolis detectives and speak words that would chill even veteran investigators. "I'm not going to fight this situation. This won't be a hard-fought case. Just read our text messages. Then you'll understand why I did what I did." But Mariah Samuels had already shown the world exactly who David Wright was. Her final Facebook posts included security footage, her own documentation of Wright attacking her weeks before her murder. The video shows him striking her repeatedly outside her home. She had done everything right. She had evidence, she had witnesses, she had a protection order. What she didn't know was that 2 other women had already walked this exact path with David Wright. 2 other protection orders, 2 other escapes. They survived. Mariah wouldn't. Welcome back to True Crime Anatomy. To our incredible subscribers who've been with us through every case, thank you. Your support means everything. May your families stay safe wherever they are. If you're joining us for the first time, hit that subscribe button. We tell the stories others won't, the details that matter, the truths that need to be heard. Every morning at Petco in Fridley, Mariah Samuels arrived before the store opened. Her co-workers would find her already setting up her grooming station, humming softly to calm the nervous dogs who'd soon fill her schedule. For 7 years, she transformed matted, anxious pets into proud, tail-wagging companions. Her colleague Jasmine Brown worked beside her almost every single day. She had this gift, Brown would later say. The most aggressive dogs would just melt in her hands. But Mariah's world extended far beyond Minneapolis. Her Instagram told the story of a woman who refused to be contained by city limits. Thailand, Mexico, Jamaica. Each photo showed the same radiant smile, the same curious eyes taking in every new experience. She'd tell her friends she was saving for the next adventure, planning to show her boys that the world was bigger than Minnesota. Those boys were everything. Her eldest, 18, had just started talking about college applications. The younger one, 11, still needed help with homework every night. As a single mother, Mariah juggled multiple jobs to keep them stable. They lived in North Minneapolis, in a modest home on Russell Avenue that she'd worked years to afford. She celebrated her 34th birthday on August 30th, 2025. David Eugene Wright's federal identification number was 05891-041. He'd carried it since 2006, when the District Court of Minnesota convicted him on drug possession charges. Not his first arrest, not his last, but it was the one that put him in the federal system, the one that should have meant closer monitoring, stricter supervision. By 2020, Wright had developed a pattern that would become horrifyingly clear only in hindsight. A woman filed for a protection order that year. In her petition, she wrote words that would echo through time. The court granted her request. Wright stayed away for a while. 2 years later, 2022, a different woman, same courthouse, another protection order. This petition contained details that should have set off every alarm in the system. The Federal Probation Office had Wright's file. They knew about the protection orders. They knew about the gun violation that had him under supervision. Both women from 2020 and 2022 survived their encounters with Wright. They moved, changed phone numbers, looked over their shoulders. They were the warnings the system failed to read. They were the pattern that should have predicted what would happen to Mariah Samuels in the early morning hours of September 15th, 2025. Spring in Minneapolis brings hope. The ice melts, the days stretch longer, and people emerge from winter isolation. It was during these warming months that Mariah Samuels met David Wright. The exact details of their first encounter remain unclear. Some say through mutual friends, others suggest a chance meeting. What matters is that by May, they were dating. Wright presented himself as reformed. 50 years old, he spoke about second chances, about learning from mistakes. He had a job, dressed well, knew how to make Mariah laugh. For a single mother juggling work and children, he seemed stable, mature. He offered to help with errands, showed interest in her boys' activities, brought flowers to her workplace. But Wright's version of affection came with surveillance. He memorized Mariah's schedule down to the minute. Petco opened at 9, he knew she arrived at 8:15. Her younger son's school released at 3:20, Wright would drive by at 3:25. Tuesday nights were grocery runs. Thursday evenings, she visited her sister Simone. Friends started noticing changes by June. Mariah, who once posted freely on social media, became quieter online. During gatherings, her phone would ring incessantly. She'd step away to answer, returning with forced smiles. Her friend Jasmine Brown remembered one incident at a coworker's barbecue. Her phone rang 17 times in an hour. 17. She finally turned it off, and I saw her hands shaking. The transformation accelerated through July. Wright began appearing at places without invitation. Mariah would mention planning to meet her Aunt Carolyn for lunch, and Wright would already be at the restaurant when they arrived. He'd explain it as coincidence, romance, proof of his devotion, but his eyes would scan every man who walked past their table, every waiter who smiled too long. Mariah made a decision that would trigger everything that followed, pulling away, creating distance. She'd stopped answering his calls immediately and stopped explaining her whereabouts. She grew tired and called Wright and ended the relationship. Clean break. No room for negotiation. August 26, 2025. The date Mariah Samuels' life split into before and after. She'd been on the phone with her best friend when Wright appeared at her back door. Not knocking, just standing there, staring through the glass. When she didn't let him in, he began circling the house, testing windows, rattling doorknobs. Mariah's friend heard everything through the phone. She heard Mariah telling Wright to leave, heard Wright's voice getting louder, more aggressive, heard the moment Wright found an unlocked window. The friend called 911 while listening to Mariah scream. What happened inside that house would be documented in medical reports and court filings. Wright grabbed Mariah's phone, tried to destroy it. When she fought back, he struck her with his pistol. Multiple blows to her head, leaving knots and scratches. Bruises formed on her collarbone where he'd grabbed her. Her legs bore marks from being dragged across the floor. At one point, he pressed the gun to her temple and asked if she really wanted to die over another man. Wright fled before police arrived. Officers took photos, documented injuries, wrote reports. Mariah filed for an order for protection that same day. The court granted it immediately. Standard procedure for domestic violence cases with weapon involvement. August 29, 2025, Wright was served with the protection order. The document was explicit. No contact with Mariah Samuels or her 11-year-old son. Stay away from her home, workplace, and children's schools. No phone calls, texts, emails, or messages through third parties. Violation would result in immediate arrest. She blocked him on all social media except Facebook. For 2 weeks, Wright appeared to comply. Mariah began to breathe again. She returned to work, celebrated her birthday quietly with family, started feeling safe enough to walk to her car without checking over her shoulder. The system seemed to be working. August brought Mariah's 34th birthday. Wright had been planning for weeks, he told everyone. He'd bought gifts, made reservations, arranged surprises. He showed up at her house with the birthday presents, jewelry, perfume, clothes, all still wrapped. Mariah wouldn't open the door. Through the glass, she told him to leave. He refused. For 3 hours, he sat on her front steps, occasionally calling out reminders of their good times, promises to change, declarations of love that sounded more like ownership with each repetition. September 12, 2025, a text appeared on Mariah's phone. I am sorry. I still have things that I had for your birthday. I hate that you won't accept them, but anyway, I will chill. One last question. Why haven't you blocked me on here? I will never be able to do it. I love you, Mariah, and I am truly sorry for the hurt I caused you. I will regret that night the rest of my life. I am sorry for this, but I miss you, Mariah. Nah, I just miss you. It was right, violating the protection order through a burner phone. Mariah screenshot the message, saved it to show police later. She didn't respond. Mariah couldn't sleep. The weight of everything, the assault, the fear, the anger, demanded release. She opened Facebook and typed, "I can't stand a human being who can't take accountability for their fup actions. Hit, punch, slap, push, shove, whatever you want to call it. No man can call themselves a man after putting their hands on a woman physically in any shape or form. Replace the word man with coward. Or should I say is just really illiterate in real life. Now that's a damn shame." 90 minutes later, she posted again. This time with evidence. CCTV footage from her home security system showing Wright attacking her outdoors. The video was clear, undeniable proof of violence. She wanted the world to see who David Wright really was. September 14th, 2025, 4 a.m., Wright was outside her house. Mariah saw him on her security cameras, walking around her property, checking her car, peering through windows. She called police, reported the violation, described his location. By the time officers arrived, Wright had vanished into the pre-dawn darkness. Frustrated, exhausted, and terrified, Mariah made what would become her final Facebook post. "I was trying to stay silent, but stalking me at 4 in the morning, and the police ain't doing shit, or did a thing besides serve him a protective order, and clearly it's not doing shit." In less than 4 hours, those would be the last words Mariah Samuels would ever write. The protection order, that official document meant to shield her from harm, remained in effect. It would outlive her by 3 hours and 57 minutes. 7:45 a.m., multiple witnesses would later describe seeing a man on a bicycle moving slowly down Russell Avenue North. He wore dark clothing, kept his head down, pedaled with unusual determination for someone on a casual morning ride. The bicycle itself would become evidence, stolen hours earlier from a yard 6 blocks away, chosen specifically because it would be silent, wouldn't require parking, and could navigate narrow spaces between houses. David Wright had planned this approach carefully. He knew Mariah's morning routine, knew she'd be preparing to leave for work at Petco, knew her boys had already left for their weekend activities, knew she'd be alone. He abandoned the bicycle in an alley behind her house and moved on foot toward her driveway. 7:50 a.m., Mariah Samuels sat in her driver's seat, keys in the ignition, preparing to reverse out of her driveway. She may have been checking her mirrors. She may have been adjusting the radio. She may have seen Wright approaching and tried to lock her doors. What happened in those final seconds remains known only to Wright himself. The first shot shattered the driver's side window. Then came the second, the third, the fourth. Wright moved methodically around the vehicle, firing through the driver's door, then stepping to the passenger side, continuing his barrage. The gunshots came so fast that neighbors initially thought they were hearing firecrackers, a terrible staccato rhythm that lasted less than 30 seconds. Multiple witnesses saw what happened next. Wright grabbed the driver's door handle, tried to pull Mariah's body from the vehicle. Whether he wanted to confirm she was dead or had some other intention, he struggled with her weight, her body's position, the reality of what he'd just done. Blood was already pooling on the concrete, spreading in crimson rivers between the cracks in the pavement. One neighbor, who asked not to be identified, watched from their kitchen window. He stood there for maybe 10 seconds after he stopped shooting, just looking at her. Then he tried to pull her out, but she was caught on something, the seatbelt maybe. He gave up, looked around like he just remembered where he was, and took off. The first 911 call came from a resident 3 houses down. There's been a shooting on Russell Avenue, a lot of shots, someone's hurt badly. Within seconds, multiple calls flooded the emergency dispatch center. Responders arrived to find Mariah Samuels slumped in her driver's seat, her body riddled with gunshot wounds. Officer Kenneth Martinez, first on scene, immediately called for emergency medical support. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but their assessment was swift and devastating. The bullets had found their marks with deadly precision, multiple wounds to her torso, arms, and head. At 8:09 a.m., Mariah Rosanna Samuels was pronounced dead at the scene. She never made it out of her driveway, never made it to work, never made it to see her boys again. The crime scene told its own violent story. Investigators documented 15 bullet holes in the Jeep Cherokee, 7 on the driver's side door, 5 through the driver's window, 3 on the passenger side. The pattern revealed Wright's movement around the vehicle, what prosecutors would later call a deliberate execution designed to ensure death from multiple angles. The abandoned bicycle became crucial evidence. Found leaning against a garage 2 blocks away, it carried Wright's fingerprints on the handlebars and seat post. The owner, when contacted, confirmed it had been stolen from their unlocked shed sometime between midnight and 6 a.m. Wright had planned even this detail, choosing transportation that wouldn't link back to him, that could be discarded without consequence. The crime scene tape around 1409 Russell Avenue North would remain for 12 hours as investigators processed every detail. The burgundy Jeep Cherokee, with its bullet-riddled doors and blood-stained interior, would be towed to the police impound lot, where it would be examined for any additional evidence. In those first hours after the murder, as investigators worked the scene and began their manhunt for David Wright, Mariah's boys were kept at their grandmother's house, shielded from the news that would shatter their world. They didn't know yet that their mother's final act of courage, documenting Wright's abuse, sharing her truth with the world, would become the very evidence that would ensure her killer could never claim innocence. The all-points bulletin for David Eugene Wright had been active for 2 hours. Every patrol car in Minnesota carried his photo. Every officer knew his name. But Wright wasn't just a local problem anymore. His federal probation status triggered automatic involvement from the U.S. Marshals Service. Within minutes of positive identification, the Marshals' Violent Fugitive Task Force activated. They brought resources Minneapolis couldn't match: facial recognition systems, interstate coordination, access to federal databases that showed Wright's complete criminal history across state lines. Nearly 19 hours after Mariah's murder, Anoka police received a call from a motel manager on Highway 10. A guest matching Wright's description had checked in using cash, providing a fake name but real ID when pressed. The arrest operation involved 17 officers from 3 agencies. They surrounded the motel, evacuated adjacent rooms, established a perimeter that Wright couldn't escape. But when they breached the door at 3:14 a.m., they found Wright sitting on the bed, fully dressed, hands already raised. "He'd been waiting. I knew you'd find me," Wright said, according to the arrest report. He offered no resistance, made no attempt to flee or fight. As officers secured him, Wright asked only one question: did she suffer? As investigators built their case, a troubling discovery emerged. The August 26th assault, the pistol whipping that led to Mariah's protection order, had generated a police report. Officers had photographed injuries, taken statements, documented evidence. Yet that file had never been forwarded to the county attorney's office for prosecution. It sat in administrative limbo while Wright remained free. Minneapolis Police Sergeant Garrett Parton would later explain that Mariah did not wish to pursue criminal charges after the August assault. But advocates questioned this narrative. How could someone who filed for a protection order, who posted video evidence online, who repeatedly called police, not want prosecution? The disconnect between police records and Mariah's documented actions raised questions that would haunt the investigation. David Wright sat in interview room 3 at Minneapolis Police Headquarters. No lawyer, he'd waived that right. What followed would become one of the most chilling confessions in Minneapolis criminal history. "I'm not going to fight this situation," Wright began before questions were even asked. "This is not going to be a hard-fought case." His voice carried no emotion, no remorse, just matter-of-fact acknowledgement of what he'd done. Detective Thompson read Wright his rights again, confirmed he understood them, verified he was speaking voluntarily. Wright nodded to each point, then made an unusual request. "Get my phone. Read the messages between me and Mariah. All of them. Then you'll understand why I did what I did." For the next 3 hours, Wright detailed his relationship with Mariah, his surveillance methods, his growing rage at her rejection. He described feeling disrespected when she filed the protection order, betrayed when she posted the assault video online. In Wright's narrative, every action Mariah took to protect herself became justification for murder. She was seeing another man, Wright stated, though investigators found no evidence of any new relationship. She was trying to destroy my reputation, he claimed, though he was the one with multiple protection orders from different women. Every sentence revealed a man who viewed Mariah's independence as a personal attack, her safety measures as acts of war. When asked about the gun, Wright's story shifted. First, he claimed he'd found it, then bought it from someone on the street. Finally, he admitted a friend had sold it to him weeks earlier, knowing his federal conviction prohibited him from owning firearms. The seller's identity remained a mystery Wright refused to solve. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty's office moved with unusual speed. Within 48 hours of Wright's arrest, formal charges were filed: second-degree murder and illegal firearm possession. The charging documents included Wright's confession, witness statements, and a timeline that showed premeditation. At Wright's first appearance, Magistrate Judge Patricia Kelly set bail at $1 million. Wright's federal probation was automatically revoked. The murder charge alone guaranteed he'd return to federal prison regardless of the state case outcome. His probation officer, who'd supervised Wright for 2 years, later admitted to investigators they'd never conducted a home visit, never verified his employment, never followed up on the protection orders filed against him. As Wright was led back to jail after his initial hearing, he turned to the gallery where Mariah's family sat. "Tell her boys I'm sorry," he said. Simone Hunter's response was immediate and raw. "You're not sorry. You're just caught." 5 days after Mariah's murder, Russell Avenue North transformed into something it had never been before: a pilgrimage route. 150 people gathered outside 1409, where fresh flowers covered the bloodstains that rain hadn't washed away. They came carrying signs, wearing purple, Mariah's favorite color, and ready to walk. Taiwan Taylor Clark stood at the front of the crowd, megaphone in hand. Mariah's cousin had driven from Georgia the moment she heard the news. As founder of Jen's Hope House, a shelter for domestic violence survivors, she'd seen this story before. Different cities, different names, same ending. Mariah did everything she was supposed to do. Taylor Clark's voice carried over the crowd. She called police, she filed reports, she got the protection order, she even posted evidence online when the system failed her. And she's still dead. If doing everything right doesn't keep you alive, what are we telling survivors? As the march concluded, participants created a memorial at the precinct entrance. Purple ribbons tied to the fence, photos of Mariah, and hundreds of protection orders from other survivors. Not copies, actual orders, some decades old, others recent, all representing women who'd sought help from a system that promised safety but delivered paperwork. Minnesota's protection order system came under scrutiny. In 2024, the state issued roughly 15,000 protection orders. Violations occurred in approximately 40% of cases. Arrests for violations happened in less than 10% of reported incidents. The math was simple and deadly. Most protection order violations resulted in no consequences for perpetrators. Dr. Patricia Gonzalez, director of the Minnesota Coalition for Battered Women, provided stark context. In 2024, Minnesota has seen 18 domestic violence homicides. In 17 of those cases, there were prior police reports. In 12, protection orders existed. Mariah Samuels represents not an anomaly, but the norm. These aren't failures of individual officers or agencies. This is architectural. The system is built to document violence, not prevent it. If you've survived domestic violence, if you've navigated the system's failures, if you've held your own paper shield and wondered if it would be enough, share your story with anyone who has the power to transform documentation into actual protection. Mariah's death can't be undone, but maybe the next woman seeking help will find more than paperwork. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to this channel, not because true crime is entertaining, but because these stories demand witnesses. Tomorrow we'll examine another case, another protection order, another system failure. We'll keep documenting until documentation becomes action. Until paper shields become real protection. Remember her name, not just as a victim, but as proof that doing everything right isn't enough when the system itself is wrong.